Patrick Webster. Patrick, thanks for joining us on the Aquatic Life Podcast. We love to have you. Thanks. We're really looking forward to chatting with you.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, you guys. This is really fun. Yeah. Good to talk about some diving here amidst everything happening.
That's for sure.
And see you're a Nowie diver.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Nowie diving because of the university program, basically. So, I was a PADI open water, and then immediately, I basically did my advanced and my rescue in about 6 months so that I could get into the UCSC scientific diving class. Nice. Once I realized that everybody that I was looking up to in college, all of the upper class folks, upperclassmen, they were, everybody who knew what they were talking about, basically about marine biology, they were all divers in the scientific diving program. And so I was like, okay, well, I have to get into that. And then once I realized that it was, money and time and everything, that was my extracurricular. That's all I did was dive, and went into the Nowie program at Aqua Safaris over in Santa Cruz.
Nice.
And I made my way to scientific diving.
Now, is that what you went to college for, to be a marine biologist? Or?
Yeah. So when I was 5 years old, I saw the sea otters at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and I decided I was going to be a marine biologist and work there. I grew up in the foothills of the French Alps and in the suburbs of Stockholm, Sweden. And so whenever it would come around to like, what do you want to be when you grow up? My friends would say like, oh, I want to be a nurse, a soccer player. I want to be, business administration, something. And it would get to me and I'd be like, I'm going to be a marine biologist at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And they're like, where's that? I'm like, you don't need to know. I got a plan. Like, just teach me algebra. Let's keep this thing rolling. So then I found out what the SATs were about 2 weeks before I had to take them. So I had not done long division in a long time. And so I didn't do too hot academically there, but UC Santa Cruz took a chance on me. And once I showed up there, I realized that was the exact perfect spot to be up on campus studying, and then could go directly down to what was then the Long Marine Lab. Started working with folks at the Seymour Center, the Seymour Marine Discovery Center, as an interpreter there, working with marine science, taking the knowledge that I learned up on campus and sharing it with volunteers and with the visitors there, and eventually got a job at the aquarium after graduation, and I'm still working there now. But on the side is where scientific diving really opened up this whole completely different world to me of diving. I had never thought about being a diver. I just knew I was going to do, quote, marine biology, whatever that meant. And then once I discovered scuba diving, that was it. That was like a complete secondary door that opened up. And so, kept the aquarium dream alive, kept wanting to work in marine science and marine science communication. But then definitely the life affirming discovery from that time was diving in kelp forests. So that's what I do on my spare time to this day. Go diving.
Awesome. So you enjoy the cooler temperate waters up there, huh?
Oh yeah, I think just out of like sheer momentum, it's what I learned how to dive in. My four basic my first two open water dives were at the San Carlos Beach Monterey Breakwater, which is about 10 minutes from where I live now. And it was 6-inch visibility, just following the bright yellow fins of my instructor, just like, the light getting you out of the tunnel, holding onto my buddy's hand like really hard and just kicking. We were probably in like 12 feet of water because he just was like, well, it's terrible, let's just drop here. And we kicked around for 20 minutes. And I ended up doing my third and fourth dives off of a boat in Carmel where the visibility was like 30 or 40 feet.
Right.
And so he had me taking my BC on and off, doing a CISA along the anchor line while you have these tech divers that are like, what are you guys doing? Like, this is the most incredible diving ever. You're going to do all these skills, but like, I had no time underwater to my name. So, Yeah, cold water is where it's at for me. There's nothing better than a kelp forest on a beautiful day. And I mean, honestly, actually, this past weekend was all-time best ever, as good as it
Really?
gets
Nice.
out here. I mean, we had at least 80-foot visibility vertically, just still water, sun, no fog, so you could actually have the God rays through the kelp. And yeah, I think, growing up a missionary kid, I was around church my whole life, but I honestly, sort of like John Muir-esque to paraphrase him, but the first time I went to church was when I went diving in the kelp forest on a sunny day, because you just
Amen,
have
brother.
the
It's
God
so surreal.
beams through the stained glass of the kelp canopy. It's something else. I would take kelp diving on a good day over just about anything else in the world, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
totally surreal. I mean, Dalton and I have only been in SoCal, but we have our kelp forest there too. And the dives, we got all of our certifications, and me through rescue diver, and Dalton's instructor now too. But we started out diving, and it definitely was so cool just to be able to swim through the kelp forest. And it's like nothing else. But
Yeah.
Dalton and
Yeah,
I,
you get to be.
yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry. You get to be like a bird flying through the forest. You get to be the
Yeah.
owl that's going
Yes.
around, like
Yeah.
because you're like that three-dimensionality of the kelp forest. Like on a coral reef, I feel like a lot of time you're going to be looking down and like
Yes.
maybe kind of up, or like if there's a big pelagic something that swims over you, but that's like
Yeah, you're
that's
never
just like,
looking to your off side. You're always
right,
looking to the reef side.
right.
But in the kelp forest, you're just like, it's everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry
It's
to
probably
interrupt.
probably
No,
my
it's fine.
biggest my biggest struggle has always been the colder water. And when it's funny when you were talking about visibility, when Todd and I did a dry suit course in Florida, it was in what they call a sink, and so it wasn't a spring. It was basically a lime, a sinkhole that
Okay.
had filled with water, and so all these tannins and just
Oh,
crap all over
I've
it.
seen that stuff. Okay. Yeah.
But it never got clear. I mean, we went down like 50 feet, and you couldn't see your hand in front of your face.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's
And the water was freezing.
That's the fun stuff. That's where I feel like everyone in cold water is like paying their dues for the good days, where it's
Right.
just like
Yeah.
you don't get to cold water dive like as an afterthought. You really have to want it, because you're definitely going to be very cold by the end. And
do you dry dive do you dive dry? Are you in a dry suit, or what do you
so I do have a dry suit for work dives. I am not I think anyone who starts scuba diving figures out which economic pathway they have to what kind of gear they have available to them. So the job has a dry suit there for me to keep me comfortable when that happens. But mild-mannered Pat can only really afford so much. And since I have a camera, I was kind of like, well, does the camera get the money? Does the warm body like take a hit? So
camera gets the money.
I have a very thick open cell wetsuit. It's a 10 and 10 mil custom suit from Heat Wave, which just recently closed down over in Santa Cruz. They were the ones making all of the PSCO, the Partnership for Interdisciplinary Studies of Coastal Oceans, that group that does kelp forest monitoring and MPAs. They were Heat Wave's #1 customer, getting all of these wetsuits for research divers that are being thrown around in like 10 feet of water trying to count like blades of algae. So they're very robust. So I got that, thankfully, the year that he just decided, I'm done, I'm closed. And then everyone was just like, wait, one last one. So yeah, I'm in an open cell suit, dry suit. I like it because a hydrated diver is a safe diver in my book. But yeah, definitely there are days like right now you want the dry suit. I have the wind blowing outside the window right now. You can see the white caps a little bit through the trees, and it like the upwelling is severe this year. It's like 48 degrees yesterday diving around the corner. So yeah, it's a chilly one out here, but it's what drives that productivity.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell us about your journey into underwater photography. Came over, you discovered your love of actually diving for marine biology. When did you pick up your first camera, and tell us how your journey into how what you're doing today?
Yeah, well, I think I'm part of that GoPro generation where that little camera changed everything for so much action sports. And I grew up with ski and snowboard videos, and when I was in high school, I liked to film skating and skiing and like edit. And so I got a GoPro when I got to college. To film some surfing, skateboarding, just like generally as like a little birthday present to myself. And then obviously it was like, oh well, I'm diving now. Can I bring this camera underwater? So I got a housing for that. And then a new version of a GoPro comes out, and then it's like, well, I should get that one because it has 4K, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then as diving kept going, and then after I graduated, I didn't have any projects anymore. For scuba diving, now I had a full-time job, and then I would help with diving here and there as a dive master, like helping out different things. But I didn't have you have to show up here to go dive and get this data anymore. So I was like, well, I'll go diving and take a GoPro. And then after a while, you get really frustrated with how terrible the GoPro quality is in bad visibility water. It's just like, well, this is terrible. So then you're like, what do I do? Oh, I get a light. So then you like save up and painstaking over getting a light, get the light. Suddenly the video is a whole lot better. Then you realize that it'd be better with 2 lights. And then it'd be better if I had this tray to hold both lights.
Yeah.
And so I just got to warn anyone who's listening, it's such a slippery slope once you start thinking, ooh, pictures and videos underwater, because there's a whole lot out there of really amazing stuff that you want to play around with. But really what happened is I entered a video contest that I won. It was the Eco Comedy Film Competition back, I think, in 2014. And it happened to have a $2,000 cash prize. So I used that $2,000 to go $8,000 into debt, purchasing a used GH4, Panasonic GH4, which is an interchangeable lens camera. So you can put a macro lens, put a wide angle lens on there. And so I got the housing, and yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, is there a reason that you chose Panasonic? You were drawn to that particular lens, that camera?
Video quality.
Because usually it's known for video, for having really great video. Was that kind of what you were thinking, or was something
exactly
else?
So I had this chunk of change, and as someone who didn't grow up with like new things, I was just like, oh, I should buy this epic camera. And I've never recovered from that moment financially, but 6 years later, because new cameras come out. And so the Panasonic GH4 was really marketed to me by Backscatter Photo and Video, which is, I'm very fortunate to live in Monterey and have Backscatter right there at the end of Cannery Row, one of the largest selections of underwater photo gear in the world, one of the best underwater photo shops around, and it happens to be at the end of Cannery Row. Like, I don't know what I would do if I was just somewhere where it's just like, oh, I'd like a camera. Like, I could just walk in there like, hey, what do you have? And one of the employees there had this old camera that he was looking to upgrade. So yeah, he told me the video was great on it, and so that's what I started doing, was a whole bunch of video. And then I eventually realized, well, I can't keep buying more hard drives that are filling up with all this video, and I'm making some edits here and there. And then my computer couldn't handle the codecs anymore.
Yep.
And then I had to get a second monitor, and it's just like, wait, is buying an underwater camera meaning that you're buying a new computer and a new hard drive and a new, like, wait, no one told me that.
Especially
no one
if you're
warned me.
Video, yes. Yep.
Yeah. So then I was like, okay, well, if I can spend 3 hours after a dive going through video and making like a 2 or 3 minute video clip out of some highlights, or I can spend an hour editing one photo from the dive that I really, really like, and get that out there into the world on social media. And then I can, find other photos that I like later. And that felt like a better workflow for me in terms of the hard drive space. And that's when I kind of transitioned over into photos a lot more. And And so I've kind of gone back and forth between video editing, photo editing, but that was basically the slippery slope. Was I don't really have a purpose to go diving, but I want to go diving. And so I took all these videos, and with that, I started making a species identification website called upwellings.com. It's many years out of date. I haven't looked at it in a while. And I've been actually trying to get brand new video and better video up there, but it's basically a videographic species identification website for local Monterey animals. And that was kind of the side project. And then that just led to everything tangential, right? Like you happen to be out on a great day, and then like the news wants that video clip, or you take a weird video of an octopus hunting a crab, and then a seal comes and eats the octopus, and then that ends up going viral. And so like you just end up diving for videos, and then as you get them out into the world in whatever way, people start seeing them, and then just kind of snowballs into other things there. Yeah.
So do you put any of your work up on stock agencies, or do most of your referrals that you're getting through Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah, so I would say, so I used to be a lot better about trying to get video footage up on stock websites and everything. In a way, my Vimeo is a bit of a stock page because it's keyworded and has tags and everything for specific species and localities. So if people are looking up, like, had a few videos that made it to the news when the pyrosomes, the sea pickles, those bright pink things were washing up. And that's just from people Googling for, that species, and they find my Vimeo page, and then they ask if they can use it. So I've gotten a few hits there as far as like selling stuff. But I know that, if you're on Pond 5 or nature footage or all those like areas, that's a really good way to get discovered. But honestly, what I've just been really focused on is my Instagram and Vimeo. And I was actually starting a YouTube channel before coronavirus shut everything down. And so my studio, everything that I'm recording this right now, like home studio, became work studio. But just mostly the hits have been coming from Instagram and hashtags there for photos and stuff. But you can definitely do a lot more than what I'm doing to get video out there into the world with those stock sites. But it's all a matter of how much time do you want to spend on your computer. Yeah. Because I work on my computer all day. So at the end of the day, it's just like, all right, time to catalog 6 gigs of kelp forest footage, like rockfish, go for rockfish.
Yeah, tag them all. It's a pain in the butt. But having said that, if you guys go and look at Patrick's Instagram, you're going to see some amazing photos and video. But like just the seascapes of the kelp forest, it's so serene and beautiful. And like you said, the God rays coming down, like that could easily be like an area, like anyone's favorite screensaver or
thank you.
live living background. So that would definitely sell hands down at any stock photo.
Oh dang, I'm dropping the ball. Okay, hold on.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up real quick. I got some money to make, I think.
And then I'll give you some hashtags to throw on there.
That'd be perfect.
You don't have to spend 8 hours on it, but just really cool. You had mentioned it a little bit earlier though. One of your videos of the octopus hunting a crab that ends up then getting why don't you tell us the story of Whiskers and that video it took, and then how, long story short, this video got picked up by National Geographic's YouTube channel and now has almost 1 million views, which is awesome. So tell us that story.
Thank you. Well, I mean, first of all, shout out to Whiskers. He's really the harbor seal that did it. Yeah, Whiskers was a very familiar harbor seal to Monterey divers, especially at nighttime. He was one of the smart ones who figured out that diver lights are really good at finding fish for you. And so he was notorious for absolutely ruining every single video that you would take at night, because if you were filming an octopus, he would come and eat it and you had no idea where he was. And so then he would like leave and you're like, oh. And so actually just shout out to Whiskers as well. Because I took a whole bunch of video of him when he was really close. He would hang out underneath your arm. Like you'd be like with your camera and he'd hang out right here and he'd go after whatever it is that you were fishing. And I ended up getting really good video footage of his face showing how they use their vibrissae, their whiskers, to hunt at night. And that ended up being really useful just randomly for some naval postdocs that were studying how harbor seals hunt at night, those vibrations and everything. So Whiskers, a very important animal, it turned out to be, not only for viral fame, but also for some research. I say was because a harbor seal that fit Whiskers' description was found without his head on the beach a few months like into the winter when the white sharks were back around. And I can imagine that based off of how plump he was getting from disrupting divers, that he was probably a good look for the sharks. So RIP Whiskers. But that video was a night dive. We saw him earlier in the dive, and then he disappeared. Hadn't seen him in about 30 minutes. Figured he was gone. We were in very shallows with my buddy Connor, and we found this blue swimming crab, which was already pretty special because blue swimming crabs are not very commonly seen up here. They're a little bit more southern, is my understanding. And so there's a blue swimming crab, and it's being hunted by an octopus, and we're like filming it, and the octopus is going after the crab like, oh, who's gonna win? Who's gonna win? Who's gonna win? And then just the perfect timing of the video clip is that right as the octopus lunges, out of nowhere, Whiskers comes in and just plucks the octopus, bites it, it inks everywhere, it shakes it, bites it, and swims off. And then I start laughing because I was startled, and it was the funniest thing ever. And I posted that on my Instagram, and people, a couple of friends of mine who worked with the BBC, just they watched it, and they were like, dude, that's a viral video, like this is gonna go viral. I was like, what do you mean it's gonna go viral? And then it like starts being picked up and reshared, and Connor's video is being shared, and then we got reached out to by a viral video management company, which I didn't even know those existed, called Viral Hog, who was just like, we are going to license this video, you'll get a certain amount of money and cut from all of these views and everything. Right. We're like, oh, okay, some money for this video, and we give it to them, and it got licensed to Nat Geo, to Discovery Channel. But when we really noted, and we were like, this is incredible, wow, like that's so cool. But then it kept going. It got picked up by a whole bunch of Japanese reaction shows where you have the panel of people that watch internet videos, and they just react. And my favorite is there was some Russian YouTuber who commented on that video and made fun of me, like Santa Claus laughing underwater. Like, yeah, exactly. So that was my first like touch of virality, and how just so quickly it was everywhere all the time. And so it keeps coming back up, keeps getting posted. And it goes back and forth between being like, that's such a cool video, to these people murdered that octopus, to we're on Team Seal. And then it's just like, think of the crab, it got away, don't you like crabs? And like all the debate that happens around it. So that's Whiskers. Shout out, RIP. Thank you so much, Whiskers, for such the great many years of diving. But then that viral video comes around every so often, and it's always awesome. Fun to see that.
That's really cool. We'll definitely include the link to the video, and we'll have to see if we can find the Russian reaction video too.
Yeah,
we'll include whatever we can in the show notes, so check those out. But awesome, that was an awesome video.
So you said you started on a GH4. I assume you've upgraded to the GH5 by now?
I do have the GH5 now, yes. GH5 and a Nauticam housing. I have 3 different lenses that I use with that. I have the Panasonic 8mm fisheye lens, which is kind of the classic wide angle lens that I really enjoy. Just makes everything very dramatic. That's what these photos behind me were taken with that. I have a 12-35, which is effectively a 24-70, and that's mostly for topside video, and then underwater. It's kind of like a mid-range camera. It's nice for mid-water stuff or like semi-close-ups. And then I have a 60mm macro lens. For macros, I have a Nudibranch calendar, Tasteful Nudes that I put out every year.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, last year was Tasteful Nudes Au Naturel. I think this year is going to be Tasteful Nudes Take a Picture, it'll last longer. And so for the macro, I also have the Nauticams, Nauticam housing and Nauticam CMC, the compact macro converter that goes to the front. It's a +3 magnification, I think, +4, +3 magnification of the slugs. Basically, I have a microscope underwater at that point. And I have two CNC YSO1 strobes, and then recently got the Backscatter mini flash with the snoot, so you can have the really creative lighting where it's completely black background and just like illuminate one part of the animal. And light in motion dive lights, and that's pretty much the kit. And that's why my credit card statement is always so
yes,
so depressing to look at. But the photos make up for it, I think. Instagram points, right? You can cash them in at some point. I think, right? If you have any clues,
do it all for the gram, right? Like
do
just
it for the gram.
Do it for the gram.
Oh yeah. Do you even ocean? Nope.
Do you even oceans? So that brings us into the next topic, which is you guys did this awesome video, but it's in service of it's every year that I think that Backscatter puts on the photo competition. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the Backscatter Monterey Shootout is so Backscatter is the one who runs a lot of it, but it was originally started by the Northern California Underwater Photographic Society, or NCUPS. But Backscatter is really the location, the people who put on the contest at this point. And I believe it's considered, if not, I think it is the largest underwater photo competition in the world in terms of how many participants come to it. It's over 120, I think, last year participants that come from all around the world, all around, obviously largely California, but people are coming from many different areas to come. And it's a 36-hour photo competition. So it starts Friday morning at 7 a.m. and then you have all the way until Saturday 7 p.m. to take all of your photos and submit all of your videos. Everything has to be edited. Everything has to be done, ready to go. Boom. There's 3 different categories for your photos where you have, or there's 3 different levels. So there's like beginner, advanced, or intermediate and advanced. And then you have 6 different categories of photo, I think, that you can put in. No, you have 6 different images. You can use 4 different categories. Basically, macro traditional, where you take a photo and then you don't do anything. You can't crop in. You can adjust color, adjust some lighting stuff, but you can't take out Backscatter. You can't like touch it. So that's traditional
approach, right? Yeah.
Right. It's just like, how technically good were you at taking this photo in camera, nothing else. Then you have macro unrestricted, where take out that Backscatter, crop in, highlight this, whatever it is you need to do, complete editing available to you. And then same thing in wide angle. And then you have with those 2 categories. And then you have a macro video category, 30 seconds, wide angle macro, or wide angle 30 seconds, and then a 1 or 2 minute now montage. It used to be 1 minute montage. And so the 1 minute montage is like, that's really where I've traditionally put a lot of my time, because that's usually where I like to have fun little skits, or like to do some storytelling there. And I know how to video edit just from work and like the GoPro stuff for all the years. So that's really where I focus a lot of the time, is on that. And then you submit everything, and then the judges go through it, and then there's a weighted algorithm for, if some years the people who win the competition are beginners, because they just like crushed the beginner categories. So that first place, and then like they win the whole thing. But video has a huge weighted component. And so I've been fortunate just from years where I happen to be, a lot of it too is like, did you dive at the right time of day? Was it tied in? Was it tied out? Were those animals there? So actually behind me is the pelagic red crab photo here from 2016 when I won the shootout. And I just happened to be one of the only people out when the red crabs came in a huge swarm. It was on the Friday afternoon, and it was just like, all right, that's my killer shot. So 2016, I got very fortunate with that. And then that's the Where's My Buddy video was from that year.
Nice.
Because as an underwater photographer, you become a lonelier and lonelier diver.
Yes, indeed.
Because people do not want to sit around watching you get your settings right on a shrimp for 30 minutes. And then I think 2018 as well, I was just from the weighted stuff, I ended up being first place there. But it's just so much fun. My favorite part of the competition is just there's so many divers, so many people together, all wanting to do the same thing, which is get the coolest image from underwater. And it's also, considering how new digital underwater photography is and how new scuba diving is to the world and how new so many of these tools that we have are, it's one of probably the best, like, single 36-hour period where there's the most media taken from the ocean in one location that can be shared with everyone so quickly. And it's really an incredible snapshot of what's happening in the ocean at that time. And it just always seems so miraculous what everyone is able to go out and get and find, and all these cool critters that then get shared with the world. So that's just the Sunday after the competition, when everyone's hungover, sitting in the auditorium, looking at everyone's images and watching the videos. It's like, it's the coolest time as a community. So anyway, I love the shootout. I've been very fortunate to do well at the shootout. But honestly, I would go to the shootout and just hang out,
just to
take
hang out,
photos.
right?
Not even put anything in, because like you've got everyone stoked on diving, and then some people are taking the best photo of whatever that animal is or whatever that event is that will ever happen, probably, because like it's like you have so many people there taking photos of the same things that like you come away with like that is the photo, that is it, and you're just like, it's perfect, it's crisp, and every year it's just like you're so stoked to see what other people are seeing in the ocean.
So in 2018, I looked this up. What one of your videos that won, you were like, it seemed like you were all there at the perfect time, or maybe this happens all the time in Monterey. I don't know, but there were thousands of sea nettles, these big jellyfish.
Yeah.
Right. And then so I think you had one that was just a nice 360 perpendicular view of that. And around the same time, I think also video clip was in your Do It for the Gram video, which was hilarious. We'll link all those. They're hilarious. But tell us, do those hundreds of sea nettles, is that a common occurrence there? Or was that just lucky that you were out there during that point in time?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, in terms of like the Monterey Bay is so dynamic. So those huge swarms of jellies are super common historically. And they're like, the jellies are always around. And right now, actually, there's the first little inklings of some jellies showing up, but you have to be lucky for the jellies to be in the body of water that is being pushed to shore at that time. So sometimes the jelly swarm is like off the coast 20 miles out, and it never makes its way into shore. It's like stuck in that little eddy. So there are years. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, the selfie with the I cannot. So I don't know if the folks will be able to see this, but when I took that photo of the jellyfish selfie, it probably took me like 4 or 5 minutes to get one that was like this, that I liked. But after I took this photo, a jelly actually went onto my regulator without me seeing it. And so then I went to pull my regulator up, and I see jellyfish tentacles on my regulator, and I'm like, oh shit. And then I go to my secondary, and there's jellyfish tentacle on that too. And so I'm looking at like which one is going to sting me worse. And so then, I have to breathe. I'm not about to just like go like shoot up through the jelly school to like try to catch a breath. So I just like pull my regulator up, look at it, just like, I bite down on it and sting all the inside of my lip. So you gotta suffer for your art, I guess. But so I got really lucky to be with that jelly swarm when they were freshly coming in with the high tide, with the clear water, basically. So by living here, I kind of have a sense of like, I know what the tides are, and I know what the water is like leading up to the shootout, which is a good advantage. But the main thing is that like usually in the morning there's fog. And so you want to do like a macro dive or something that doesn't require a whole lot of ambient light, or you got to dive later in the day. So this one was my second dive of the day in the afternoon when it's sunny, the high tide is coming in, the jellies are likely to come in as well.
Sorry.
No worries. It's super common to have those swarms of animals, pelagic animals, come in with that high tide. That's what happened with the pelagic red crab in 2016. It was basically the same time of day that that they were coming in. But I just happened to be there when it was clear, and then kind of out far enough away from the beach. That was about 50 feet deep, swimming away from the shore at breakwater there. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that like some years it's all about jellies, but then you might do a dive and you'll see no jellies because it's just, they're not there. And right now, if you were diving in Carmel, you would say this is the greatest conditions that have ever existed on the face of the earth. But if you go diving in the Monterey Bay, like I did this morning, it's Mountain Dew green water. You can barely see 2 feet in front of you because there's currently a bloom of dinoflagellates that's being pushed in the bay and kept there. So it's like all this, like that's the other aspect of underwater photography too, that is like, it's so serendipitous. It's so like you have no idea what's going to be around. And so then as an underwater photographer, your goal is to hopefully train yourself in enough situations ahead of time that you know what to do with your camera to then get a good photo of that thing when it happens. But there are so many dives where you're just like, that was the sickest. And you come home and you're just like, this is garbage. Like none of it was good. So anyway, I got lucky with the jellies there.
And for everyone new to the podcast, anytime we're referencing a photo, we will have those photos in the show notes. Also, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, or if you use some podcast providers, there will be chapter artwork. You'll be able to look at the chapter artwork and it'll be there as well. But awesome photo. It happens to also be Patrick's Instagram profile pic, so you can check it out there too.
It is, yeah. For a while it was Whiskers in 2013, back when I had hair. The coronavirus grooming has inverted where my hair is. It used to be all on top of my head and none on my face, and it's just fully swapped now. But I used to have little wisps of hair coming out from underneath my hood, and Whiskers, back when he was a little pup, came over and was like feeling it with his claws, and that was my profile photo. But then after his passing, and the photo of the shootout, I was like, it's time to move on, like fully embrace the invertebrates, which is honestly, charismatic megafauna is fine, but it's clickbait as far as I'm concerned. Try to get someone excited about a comb jelly or something, and like that, you're doing good there.
That's for sure.
Well, one thing that I did notice about all of your photos, I mean, there's something to be said for right place, right time, but you have that little difference that sets you apart from a lot of common underwater photographers, and that's the ability to tell a story, whether it's in video or in photos. You can definitely see and feel the story of the image, or a good storyteller in video. Your videos that I've seen have been great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that has to do with being the pastor's kid. I don't know. You just grow up with public storytelling. And then, I grew up reading Calvin and Hobbes to learn how to read and write English. So, you've got like epic storytelling there. No, I appreciate that. No, I think the thing too that I've really learned is that when you're editing your image back at the house, like there's a lot of people in underwater photo that get very hung up on the technical aspect of it, which is, very important. Like everyone's reading Alex Mustard's book on underwater photo, or like, oh, how do you take this image and stuff. And it comes down like, and I think divers generally get very technical about everything. You have to learn about your nitrogen loading, and you need to learn about all these different things. So I think you can get very technical with it. The thing that really helped my photography was when my friend Joe Platko, who's actually, that's the photo right there, that jelly. So this wall actually on the other side over there is my photo. That's an homage to Joe's photo here. This was the first photo of a jellyfish that I saw in the Monterey Bay that made me want to do underwater photography. I saw it on Instagram. I actually sat next to Joe at a scuba diving meetup, and he asked what I did. And I was like, oh, I do a little bit of underwater video. This was when I was on my GoPro. And he was like, oh, I do that a little bit too. And I said, oh, do you know this guy, Joe Platko? And then I pulled up his Instagram to show him his own photo about how cool it is. And he thought he was being punked. I'm just like, no, check out this photo. It's so sick. He's like, I'm Joe, and I've never lived that down. So we go diving a bunch now. But so
You
this
made
image
his
here,
life. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
That's every guy's
Joe-
dream is for that to happen to him. So
Joe's the nicest guy. He's cleaned up at the shootout for so many years in a row. I mean, he's just a legendary local photographer and the nicest guy. But so that photo got me into underwater photography. This photo is what told me that I could
do
potentially be good at it, because that was the best in show at the 2016 shootout of the pelagic red crab. And then around the corner is my photo of a jellyfish when they finally came back in, because it had been 4 years since jelly swarms had really been like close to shore in the Monterey Bay. And what he showed me in Lightroom was how to adjust settings in a holistic way instead of just, exposure, contrast, whatever people are doing. He showed me like, oh, you can take a brush and you can like lighten up this face or this part of the jelly that may not have been. You can like take a graduated filter and you can like really get like a nice gradient over here. And for a long time I was like, is this cheating? Is this like, I'm not doing it right. And then, we had conversations about it over the years, and basically are just like, well, you have this raw photo that your camera takes, and your camera is just showing you based off of these settings, here's what your image looks like, but it's recording so much more information. And so bringing it into Lightroom, you can see all the information that's actually in there. You can actually see what you have to play with, and then you can adjust it. Yeah. There's the pelagic red crab photo. That was the first photo that I took where the instant I looked at it, I was like, that's the one. That like, I turned my camera off and I swam in after that. Like that was my first time where I was just like, that's exactly the photo.
So it's a great, so to those just listening to it, it's this awesome picture where you've got the crab happens to be center in frame, perfectly tack sharp. Also the sun is right directly behind it. And so then all the sea of other crabs are silhouetted behind it in the background. So again, going back to telling the story, I didn't mean to distract you from it, because I think it's great to talk about using local adjustments and to really produce your art. You take a raw image and it's meant for you to mold and craft like anything else. So keep going with it. I just wanted to have this as a reference for this photo. That
sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, the thing about that photo is that it is like, quote, heavily edited, but it's edited in such a manner that the truth of that moment is what I was trying to pull out, right? Like exactly. that is what I saw in my head when I took the photo.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when I looked at the file, I was like, I've got to do some work to get it to what it is up here. And the most freeing thing that I ever, so besides talking to Joe, and he showed me like the strength of Lightroom and what you can really do in there. So I played around in Photoshop, and stuff, but it's like Lightroom can really do so many things for you. But the main thing that also helped free my mind about what I can do with my photos was learning that Ansel Adams was a darkroom master. And if you look at his photo negatives and the finished photo, it is heavily edited. Quote edited, but you don't feel lied to by what he did. You feel the emotion of it. And so that's where it really showed me that like you have so much wiggle room, and you basically have a secondary artistic process that happens back at home on your computer, where you can really make the image that you see in front of you be that moment for people. And I think a lot of people oversaturate, overcolorize, overthink to make things more dramatic, which like totally makes sense. But there are ways to do the same drama without those color sliders, or like keeping the color correct. And so
the big thing, and I tell this to new photographers and students and pretty much anybody who asks my opinion, and obviously some people that don't ask my opinion, I tell them anyway.
Get the truth out there. Hot takes.
Exactly. Most of the famous photos that you've seen through history have been heavily edited. Whether it's dodging and burning in the dark room, cropping in, there's so many different variants. It's not what came out of camera.
Right.
And it's always been
this has been going on. This has been going on for decades.
Right. And And it almost, you know, it feels dirty for some weird aesthetic and like puritanical reason of just like everything that comes out of the camera needs to be perfect because otherwise you're being lied to. And it's like, no, you're like, this is
vision.
Right.
this is the story. This is how it feels.
Unless you're
there.
shooting journalistic news photography, it's up for grabs.
Right.
And the thing is that most people they're not going to know the difference because they're seeing the final product. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think you should get it right in camera as best as you can. But, you know, but that's what the digital darkroom is there for.
Yeah. That's why we shoot raw and we have all those other tools. It's the same thing.
It's a moment to like a raw file that I have and that Joe might have, or that, you know, another friend of mine, Kate Violet, that she might have. We'll edit it 3 different ways and it'll look 3 different ways, but it'll be how we perceive that. And I think like that's not only the beauty of underwater photography in terms of you can send 20 people into the same spot and they're going to all see something different, and they're going to express themselves differently about it. But I also think that people, like the creativity that you're able to have from scuba diving, flying around in this other world, seeing all these animals, taking the photo, and then really taking the time to create some artwork to help move people who might never see that. That is such a wonderful experience. And to put constraints around like, oh, you took out backscatter, it doesn't count anymore. It's just like, okay, like never post a photo ever again, and like stay at home and look at, you know, read a book about it. Don't ever look at a photo of it. You know, it's I that's the thing. If, you know, to encourage anyone out there, is like part of the reason that I'm able to take good photos, quote unquote, you know, is that I know what my camera can do, and I know that I can save it if I know I blew it, you know, like, because if the mola swims by and I'm like, oh, you know, no time to adjust, take the photo, and you're like, look at it, you're just like, I can fix this, you know, and that's nice to feel like you can actually like get something good out of something crap. Sorry, I'm swearing.
That's all right.
And some photos you have to edit. I mean, there's no way to get a certain shot in one shot in camera.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, we can go on for hours talking about at what point does photographs turn into digital art. Dalton and I have talked about this ourselves.
No, we have to pin it down now. We have to solve it forever and tell everyone how to express
I tell you what,
otherwise.
It's not related to underwater photography, but I tell Dalton all the time I want to start a hashtag that says hashtag Peter Lick did nothing wrong. Because he get, you know, so much slack because everyone's like, well, that's not how it really looked. You know, that's not how that's. The moon was not that big, but you know, of course he edited
his moon in a few photos.
Of course he did. Yeah. No one's gonna. You're not gonna have a wide-angle shot with the moon that big. It's obvious. So why is everyone debating it? Like, and people replace skies all the time. Look, as soon as you take something out of the camera, and if it's not for journalistic purposes, of course you're gonna tweak it. And of course, in my mind, that's the line. Everything else is digital art. It's not a photograph anymore. It's putting your vision and your personal touch on it. So yeah, it's art and no longer just a photograph. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's what makes it beautiful.
No, the only thing for me is that it's honesty in your storytelling. Like if you like, I had, you know, if I move a fish over or I delete it, like what's the difference there? But telling people that is what I did, or, you know, or like, you know, there, like so many black and white underwater photos is because you fucked up the color. So you're just like, well, black and white. Oh, it's so sick. I planned it. You know, like I think it's just very important that, like, you know, when you're sharing your vision, and then when people are like, how did you do that? You're just like, oh, I replaced this, I changed that. And then if that changes the image for them, like that's their feeling about it. But you know, you put out what you want into the world, and it's just all about like what story you're trying to tell, and then just stick to the story, and
you're for
good.
sure.
Yeah.
So
So
moving on. Yeah, go ahead, Dalton. Sorry.
Yeah,
I was just gonna
crushed it. So all you Instagrammers
Seriously.
out there that are like, we're coming after you. We're
lay
gonna
off the
start calling.
saturation
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
And
do a
don't
little bit more
and
dodging and
don't
burning.
put clip art divers in every shot just to show you as a secondary point nature.
Right,
It's a
yeah,
diver with a flashlight pointing at the lens.
Yeah. Yeah, the sixth otter coming to feed from your hand is when we're going to start saying, "Is it stuffed? What's going on?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, do you have any memorable dive experiences that stick out?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't want to do the same cliche of just like every dive there's something incredible, because no, some dives are like, I could have like stayed home and slept in. But every moment underwater is obviously an opportunity to see something incredible, and it really is about your attitude of what happens around there. But like some absolutely just, for a human land-based air-breathing animal to experience these kinds of things is really like, I think I just broke my microphone. How
You
excited
still
I
sound
am.
good. Yeah.
Perfect. There are some moments that I've experienced underwater where it's just like, how does a land-based primate get to like see and experience this? Like, shout out to everybody who figured out compressed air metal alloys and like all that stuff. Springs, whoever came up with springs, freaking scuba diving, thanks you. But I would say my first time diving in a kelp forest on a clear day, we found a little thicket where it was just like a fairy ring of kelp with sand in the middle, with the sunshine coming right down there in the middle. And again, like that religious breaking through, as Ed Ricketts would say, experience of just like, you from that moment on, you see things differently. So that was definitely like, that was probably dive like 20 back when I was doing scientific diving over at Carmel River. So that moment stands out for me for sure. Just this past weekend, I mean, I think I had the greatest kelp forest time that I've definitely had recently. I mean, like, it's up there with the best dives I've ever had. So those experiences there. But I think my first time dropping, another like moment that really stands out is in Indonesia. I'd always gone diving, in California, and I did a month over in Corsica in the Mediterranean for UC Santa Cruz's field quarter, which is beautiful. You're diving over seagrass fields and everything. Okay, so like one dive from there that really stands out was I did a full moon night dive. I was studying these cardinal fish. For those of you who dive in tropical areas, they're the red fish that come out at night, big eyes. They're nocturnal fish, apagonids. And so I was studying those, and basically we had tagged them with beads, and I was looking to see where they were at night, so where they would disperse to out on the reef. So I was out there with one of the TAs. We were looking at where these fish were. Kicking back in is about a 30-minute swim from where we were underwater. And that was at the end of the science, was when we could finally start enjoying our dive. And suddenly we start realizing there's like a school of barracuda that's kind of like hanging out, scintillating in the moonlight. And then we look down, there's like a big cuttlefish that's kind of hanging out over here. And then there's an octopus walking around, and then some conger eels that are, and no lights, just all from the moon. Yeah. And then we put our hands out in front of us and wave them around, and there was some bioluminescence, and it was streaming through your fingers. And so you had this like moonlit, desaturated seascape of just incredible Atlantean wonder in the Mediterranean. Like, you feel like Aristotle was just like, oh, and that one, like, what's up, man? Like, and it was just this incredible thing with all of the bioluminescence. And we came up to shore, and like, we had gone diving during dinner time, and we came up, and there was like epic Corsican French cuisine that was like ready for us, that was being handed to us by the other students as we're like pulling off our stuff, and just like, oh yeah, sure, I'll grab a little bit of pasta. And like, that was
surreal, right?
Surreal. But I think outside of that, in Indonesia, the first time I looked down on one of the reefs out there, and I was in Lembeh Strait, which is not like known for its coral life. You might go to Raja Ampat or somewhere else for that. But like, we went to this coral dive site, my first dive there, and you look down, and it was like looking at every nature documentary I've ever seen about a coral reef. I'd never been on like an Indonesian, you know, coral triangle, biodiversity hotspot of the world type situation. And look down, it's just incredible. It's so overwhelming, so beautiful. So that, I mean, Lembe Strait was like, for a first time scuba diving vacation, that was something else. But finally, I'll say that I have had so many life changing visions outside of the kelp here, but in Cabo Pulmo, in the southern tip of Mexico, with the Jack School that you may have seen in Mission Blue, if you watch that on Netflix with Sylvia Earle. But the Jack School, diving with huge bull sharks, but just the infinite Jack School, 10,000, 20,000 fish, all about, you know, 2 feet long, swirling together in a mass in infinite visibility from the sand to the surface. It you cannot process it. And thankfully I have a camera to like try to like make sense of it. But if you put the camera down, you're surrounded by the fish school in that warm Sea of Cortez water. I mean, it's just it's incredible. And what diving's all about.
And you have one of the videos from Cabo Pulmo on your Vimeo page, right?
I do, yeah. I don't have any other ones from recently because had a copyright issue with a song that I had licensed, and so I had to take it down. But you know, that's one of the things.
Was it who let the dogs out?
It was not. No. It was someone who said go for it, and then the label said no. Not. So and I mean, I want to edit so much more video. I have so many hard drives of video, and Cabo Pulmo is definitely a video heavy spot. But it's one of those hot spots of diving for ecotourism, as it were. It's a small little village, not so small anymore. I guess it's growing pretty rapidly now. But one of those places where the Mexican family that had been living there for generations, the same people whose grandparents were the ones who would have paddled out to see John Steinbeck and Ed Ricketts on Log from the Sea of Cortez, wearing the mask over their face because they were worried about the germs that the white people had, which is, here we are, you know, same situation 100 years later. So that family that had been living there forever, they had become commercial fishermen in that zone, and noticed that it was just like untenable to keep commercial fishing going. So they reconverted their entire area into a protected zone where the fish biomass has increased now 400+% since the 1990s. And so now people are spending millions of dollars. I think just people coming to dive with bull sharks is about $8 million a year that goes into that tiny community, just to see bull sharks in their natural environment. No chumming, no alteration of their natural behavior. And I've gotten to see those bull sharks, and they're a really incredible animal to dive with. And obviously there's no chum, there's no artificiality to it. And so it's a really amazing, hopeful spot. Now, of course, it's growing. There's extra tensions. There's resorts that are being built nearby. So that particular magic might be changing, but it might change into something similar to Cannery Row, you know, where now it's, you know, it used to be this fishing area, then it became this, you know, eco tourism spot, and then now, of course, you know, there's no more parking, but that's just what happens. You just keep going. We'll find another spot.
It's the downside to the rise of ecotourism. People get into it and realize how awesome it is. Well, now you have a million people all trying to get to the same spot.
Right. But, and we're just adjusting to what it's like to have, you know, all of this money and then trying to put a dollar value on the ecosystem service that these animals provide to people just by being around. Obviously the indigenous people who have lived, you know, who've seen the same sight that I'm seeing out my window in this area for 10,000 plus years, they have all of the techniques for how to do it, you know, for how to live with the environment. But then it's a matter of like, under the particular pressures of money and everything like that, how does that work? So we're figuring that out, inventing that as we go now. And, you know, anyway, that's a completely separate discussion. My God, what was I doing? I need to
We'll need a part 2 and part 3 to go down a
yeah,
few
no,
different
never
rabbit
mind.
holes,
No,
which is
forget I brought that up. Let's keep
no,
it
it's,
going.
it's awesome, but definitely some amazing experiences. Go ahead, Dom.
Now you mentioned Sylvia Earle. Do you have
Yeah.
any marine biologists that that you really look up to? You know, Jacques Cousteau, Rachel Carlson, Sylvia Earle, Hans Haas. I mean, is there anyone that really sticks out for you?
Yeah, I mean, all those people obviously are foundational, important people to know about. You know, Jacques Cousteau held a special place just because of being French. You know, growing up over there, watching all those things. But the thing that really changed my vision of Jacques Cousteau, in a good way, is that you see the Silent World in the first videos that he was making, where they're dynamiting coral reefs to count the fish, and they're like, you know, riding sea turtles and chopping up baby sperm whales without meaning to, and then killing the sharks that come to eat it. Like the 50s and 60s, like the sea appeared limitless. You know, he called the Sea of Cortez the aquarium of the world, and I can't even begin to understand the world that Cousteau and Sylvia Earle and everybody grew up with, seeing being decimated. That shifting baseline of what wild is, what natural is, quote unquote, which are all terms that were invented largely by white people to sell an idea, right? So there are so many biologists out there, definitely, that I look up to in my own personal journey. Giacomo Bernardi over at UC Santa Cruz is a legendary ichthyologist and geneticist over at UC Santa Cruz, done a lot of amazing work. I think the people that I've been pulling from the most recently have actually not been traditional academic people doing a lot of the work, and just I've been really vibing with what Steinbeck and Ricketts were able to do. As someone who's just arrived into this area, you know, I never really read John Steinbeck. I grew up reading other authors overseas, so their holistic view of philosophy and culture and science all intertwined and being the exact same thing at the end of the day is something that I try to attach myself to. But, you know, in a personal capacity, people like Julie Packard, who has, you know, helped with the aquarium that inspired so many people, myself included, and everything. And are, you know, as we're coming to grips in our society of like what having money means and like what it can do for the world, you can see, like, I work in a whole lot of fields with Silicon Valley inventing all of these new ways of harming democracy, it seems. And to see, you know, the family that helped start Silicon Valley heavily invested in community and helping, you know, whether or not we can have obviously a discussion about philanthropy and why it's important, like why it's necessary in our system. Why can't we just have, you know, why do we need to have a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? Like, why do they need to do that work? You know,
Well,
anyway, so
if they would
like,
divert some money from the war machine, you know.
Exactly. Right. So we're coming to that, you know. So, you know, personally, I would say that there's like a lot of the old guard that you look up to, and then you realize that like so much of the old guard work has so much more to go forward. And so, you know, a lot of the modern inspiration, I guess, that I get from is from, you know, the people that are running Reef Check, or the people that are really on the ground, like doing a lot of that work. So I definitely look up to a lot of scientists. Maybe in underwater photography, you know, I've met a few of my underwater photography heroes out of, like, you know, I'm very fortunate to do so, but there have been conversations and instances with those people where you realize that, like, oh, you're not thinking about this quite the way that I think I'm going to be thinking about it going forward, based off of like the conversations we need to have about conservation. You know, we've heard about it's no more doom and gloom. You know, we got to like give people hope. But I think one of the things that I'm really learning actually is there's a lot of white savior mentality that I have to undo, where it's like, if I can only go there and take the right photo and like get it to National Geographic, then the world will change. When you actually, you know, go to Cabo Pulmo or somewhere like that, it's just like, it's a matter of using your platform to tell the stories of the people that are there doing the work,
Yeah.
instead of coming in and taking credit for the work that's being done. There's so many things out there where, you know, like saving the vaquita is a story that is super popular. The vaquita being that small porpoise in the northern Gulf of Mexico. Leonardo DiCaprio's foundation spent so much money on it. Like there's all this money being spent on saving these animals, quote unquote. And then there's like this always, you know, twinge of racism in there, just like, why can't the Japanese figure this out? Why can't the, you know, Mexicans figure this out? We have it, like all these things when we have like no major land mammals like roaming our countryside anymore, you know, so who are we to talk about wildlife preservation in terms of the country? But anyway, like you get into this world where I think as an underwater photographer, being in such a privileged position, economically, geographically, and physiologically able to go underwater and take photos, have a computer to edit them, to post them on Instagram and like be able to do that, you've put yourself into such a like rarefied air of what humans are able to do, just trying to survive like in this world, that there has been this presumption that I've felt from previous generations that it's their job to, because they're special in some way, to tell these stories and get it out there, and that's what's really going to save everything. And there's like, that's correct, but there's that slight twist to it that I'm really kind of coming around to, where it's just like, it's my job to utilize what I have here to help the people that are in that spot tell their story, and not me going there and taking their story to tell for myself, amplifying those voices. And that's something that I feel that I have, you know, not done a whole, I've done it enough in talking to people, but from my like own life, it's something that I'm thinking a lot about, especially with Black Lives Matter having this big resurgence to the forefront of popular thought right now, of just how easy it is for me to fall into my own little bubble of like, what does Underwater Pat need to say to the world right now? As opposed to, what does Underwater Pat know that he should be bringing to other people who don't have the same access? Or how do I like learn from other people who have so much more to say about this area than I do, having crash landed here 10 years ago, and like, I go diving, so I'm an expert. And it's like, okay, hold on. There's like people who have lived here for a long, long time before you showed up. And like, how can my photography be plugged into their system instead of, yeah. So anyway, that was very long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, it's fascinating.
That's where I'm at thinking right now, and that's what you'll see on my Instagram. My Instagram is probably the only one that you're gonna have like some long diatribe about some kind of socio-political thought that I have typing in my bathtub, and then a photo of a nudibranch, you know. So
we're gonna have to have you back on pretty soon, just so we can dive into some of these other.
Yeah, sorry, I'm taking up
topics.
all your time. This is gonna be hell.
No, not at all. It's all good, but I think
we just cut it and run it.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. But it is a fascinating topic to talk about when you look at conservation and environmentalism and the complexities there of, and what responsibility, like you said, do you have to tell the whole story, to ask further questions more than just look at this dying species or shark fins, hundreds of shark fins. Yeah, that's great. But talk about the other side of the story. Talk about all the fishermen that's how they make their living. And what do we do? What is the problem? The whole sum of the problem, and before you can figure out a realistic solution. So it's
exactly.
It's just
I mean, I mean, exactly to your point. Like, you know, we're all preconditioned to view systemic problems as our own individual fault, our own individual burden to carry, and our own individual role to solve. When actually, these systemic issues, like the same systems that that are forcing people to fish out their sharks, to cut off their shark fins, those are the exact same systems that that take advantage of human lives in a system of exploitation, right? It's the exact same thing. Like the people, like if you care about shark fins, you should care about Black Lives Matter. If you care, it's the exact same systems. It's exploitation of natural resources for gain, and in a finite system, it doesn't work for all of its people. And when you know that, like, you know, all of us here, there's plenty of food for all of us to go around, but some people go to bed hungry. So like, why does that happen? Well, the society isn't set up in a manner where everybody going to bed full is the incentive, right? So so when you talk to I mean, that's the whole thing with the vaquita, you know, it's just like, oh, why won't they stop killing the vaquita? It's like, well, because that area has been ecologically decimated by the existence of Los Angeles's ability to take all of the Colorado River's water so that it ends 90 miles inland and doesn't form this estuary anymore. And like, we can't talk about saving the vaquita without talking about water rights. And, you know, if you go to Mono Lake over in California, on the other side of Yosemite, you'll see signs about how the LA Water District is the reason why this lake is not at the level that it needs to be, and hasn't been there for 50 years. And it's like, okay, well, you know, none of us are marching in the streets over water rights, but ultimately it's the same thing. So like, you know, one thing after the other. So I don't know. It's weird. There's so many different people that have said, you know, if you try to study one thing, you'll realize it's connected to everything. John Muir paraphrase, but Ed Ricketts says the same thing. But you know, you study John Muir and you realize that like, oh, he was like a virulent racist against the Native Americans that lived in Yosemite. And you're like, oh, well, I love John Muir and like what he had to say from a white perspective about white wilderness. And then you understand that like wilderness is maybe a fraught concept because it means that you're removing the human story. So I'm sitting in an area where the Ohlone, Esalen, and Rumsdian lived for 10,000 plus years before a Spaniard discovered the area, right? So Columbus statues are being torn down and thrown into rivers right now, like as we speak. And so like, hi, I'm like where Portola came in and was just like, this is Spain, you know? So it's
more the same. Yeah.
And that's underwater photography, I get. You know, like it's, you got to know that nudibranch that was out there that whole time lived here while this area went through all of its changes. And the whales that come back here that, you know, sometimes you'll see diving too far away, you can't take the photo, but you know, they are coming back from a place that was basically complete and utter decimation. And so I definitely feel like I also suffer as a photographer of the I want to take a photo of the pretty thing, and then the like disappointing thing, like urchin barrens in California is not something, you know, that you necessarily go out to try to take a photo of, but it's important to share those parts of the story too. And often it's like, oh, well, I know that this will be successful, or I like this photo, it's pretty. But it's also important to tell that larger story of, well, where there's kelp, there's also not kelp in certain areas, and where there's this animal, maybe it should be in far more abundance than when I see it here. So it's just good. It's good to study up, look from the tide pool to the stars, back to the tide pool again. Philosophy.
It's similar. One of the things that people forget is that it's not just about them. People have a very narrow view. I see the world through my environment.
Right.
I don't see the world through Jose's environment, who's a fisherman down in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
But I should try to take the time to do that.
Understand perspective.
To understand his perspective.
Right. And he can tell you, he can inform you on your perspective just as you can inform him, you know, like it's all like when you're on the dive boat in Cabo Pulmo, there's no GPS, there's no like fish finder. It's just fishermen that have been doing this for decades, who have the lineups on the hill, know exactly where the water changes color. They can see the school of jacks from like 100 feet away, and you have no idea what they're looking at. It's like, oh, it's right there. Like, get ready to jump in. You like jump in and you're in the fish school. Like, there's that experience of knowing your environment so well that for people like myself who are from a different country, a different lived experience, to come down, take my photo, post on Instagram, like, this is the greatest thing, or this is the worst thing. And it's like, tomorrow I'm not there. It's Jose, it's Juan, it's everybody who's down there on the boats, going out, going to work, doing what they have to do. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely the shift that I really feel like we need to have fewer gods of underwater photography and far more storytellers of underwater photography everywhere, right? Like, I think that the idea of, if it's not in National Geographic, it's not happening and not important. As someone who has had a photo in National Geographic and interacted with National Geographic, had a video on their YouTube channel, it's not at all it's amazing. Don't get me wrong. It's an honor, but it does not feel the way that you think it would based off of the prestige of the name and everything. And once you get disappointed by National Geographic, or in certain cases when you get, screwed over by a big name or a big company affiliation, and you understand that, like, oh, this is still just people. It's a system.
Yep.
It's money moving around. It's attention. It's clicks. And I think it's like, just I guess you have to like murder your gods, or like, just cut them down, because ultimately I think putting so much of underwater photography and things up on a pedestal, it breeds a very weird, people who go diving in resorts will see it, I'm sure. It's like this like, cater to me attitude of like, take me to this animal, show me this animal, make this animal do this thing, I want to take this photo. When I was in Indonesia, I had to tell my dive guide, like, don't scare the octopus to make it flash colors. Like, I'm fine, I'm taking a photo of it in natural environment. Don't show me the pygmy seahorse by like fanning it and like getting it to come out. Like, I'm just here to watch, but the photographer next to me is just like, throw the octopus up in the sky so I can take the photo. It's just like, okay, well, they're not a pelagic animal, but you do you. So
let's talk about just a quick public service announcement. When you anyone that sees all these octopuses that are photographers shooting up against them, and you see them swimming with all their legs thrown up, they're probably in the middle of being tossed in the air by some sort of dive guy.
Right. Unless you're a blanket octopus, which, shout out to pelagic octopuses out there. You're doing great. Keep it up. But if you ever see an octopus riding on the back of a turtle a lot, there's a way that the octopus got there. I think it's just important to not hold ourselves to be too important individually, and that we're a part of the system of all of it. So like, people who are on land, they're cultivating the farms right now to make sure that I have food at my restaurant, are hopefully enriched by the images that I'm able to take because I'm fed by their food and I've gone underwater to take this photo if they weren't doing that. And that hopefully is like enough of that like social ledger that like, my debt to society is repaid by sharing the images that I get, telling the stories, not keeping it for myself or making myself seem cooler about it. That's where the whole "do you even ocean" attitude comes for me, where it's like, is it about how cool the ocean was while you were in it, or how cool you were for going in the ocean when that happened? And it's it's so close together, but it's that particular attitude about it, because I didn't invent any of the quantum computing that you need to figure out how to make the microprocessor in this computer. I didn't invent any of the optics. I have no idea how to machine aluminum. I don't know how to make an optical sync cord, batteries. I don't know how to make a rubber wetsuit. All I know is how to pee in it. So like my contribution to this is I am the like vehicle that takes the camera down, does a few things, comes back, and like I'm just the end result of so many people making sure that like the whole rest of the system works. And so I think the only way that you plug yourself into that system as an underwater photographer is you have to share what you do. You have to share it truthfully and empathetically to other people, and just keep doing that. And that's how it works. Like, keep sharing, keep doing that work, so that the person who's serving you your burrito when you're freezing cold, you like pull out your phone, you go like, hey, by the way, I just went diving today, here, check this out. And they're like, oh, whoa, what's that? And then you're like giving back. Anyway, that's
what I was going to say. This is a very complicated topic, and we could go on for whatever, but like, what about, and you just covered it, part of what I was going to ask, but a lot of our audience may be newer underwater photographers, people just getting into it. So what are some of the things they can do that, like, don't just be there to take the shot? What are some of the pieces of advice you'd have to be more conscious of the situation? What types of things would you tell someone that's sitting next to you on that boat of how they should act and what they should do, or not how, but what's your thoughts and recommendations there for someone like that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think one of the things that I've seen in like going to Indonesia, going to Mexico, is that your attitude as the client, if you end up being someone who wants to go travel and take photos, your attitude as the client is what ends up driving how that place ends up being protected, or how the attitude ends up going. Because ultimately, people are going to take your money. Someone will. And so if you show up there and it's, you know, in Cabo Pulmo, they have quota systems for different dive sites where it's like, this dive site with the bull sharks, 200 people dove it this week. We're done. It's closed for, you know, the rest of the week. Nobody's diving there. If you come in and you're like, what? But I came all the way to like, da, 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 and you start like having that attitude, you create an incentive, whether you mean to or not, for somebody to shirk the rules, bend the rules, or straight up just like take your money and go through whatever loophole they know exists. And then you are a part of the problem to the resource coming to visit, where you have these rules that are being set up by the local people, and then you come in and you demand a specific experience. People will try to cater to that because that's ultimately how the money is flowing.
Yeah, they
So
need
I think
money to live, right? So they're
right.
gonna.
So your attitude as a traveler and as a guest in a dive destination is so crucial. Where if someone tells you like, we can't do this, you know, you can ask, oh, why is that? But from an understanding standpoint, not a disappointed I didn't get to go on my Disneyland ride standpoint. Like, it's still the ocean, it's still their habitat, still their environment. So adjusting expectations, where it's like, are you in Mexico right now? Are you not going diving? But there's like quesadillas and margaritas over here. Like, you know, things are good. Like you're doing okay. So that I think is very important. I think also bringing, like, telling your guides like what your standards are for underwater. Just like, you don't need to do, like, show me the animals that you see, point them out, but like, I don't, you know, manipulating animals, moving them around, scaring them, having them do different behaviors, things like that. Like in California, we don't really, you know, we don't really have that necessarily, because it's not really a resort destination to come shore diving, you know. But like, when you have people that are flying 30 hours to go dive in the spot to see this one animal, there's a different attitude there, and the dive guides want to make sure that you are comfortable. And so it's also up to you to, you know, keep that standard when you're there. But I mean, that's less important than respect the place that you're in, the rules that are there. They're there for a reason, and when you leave, you don't have to live by those rules anymore, but that's their home. So I think that's important. I think the other aspect too is try to talk to the people that live there and learn about what's going on there, and not just from a like, how you doing, like, where are you from kind of thing, but just like, can you tell me about this town? How long has it been around? Or like, you know, read up a little bit, try to learn some of the language if it's different, or just generally like read up on the colonial history, if you're going somewhere, you know, overseas, kind of see how you might be perceived going to that zone, or it's hard to describe, but like, you know, be a human, don't be a tourist, I guess. You know, like, just
very well said.
If you're hanging out with your buddies, what would you be asking them? You know, anyway.
Well, before we wrap this up, why don't you tell us a little bit about that logo on your merch over there?
The like very pronounced product placement. Yeah. So these little insignia here, this is Dive Mola. It's on Instagram and divemola.com, and it's my little diving company, I guess, apparel company. It's basically just this sticker. Hold on. I made this sticker back in 2014 as a let's have a Monterey Bay dive sticker. Like, what would it be? I was in Big Creek with some scientific diving students. We were, you know, thinking like, there's the California dive flag, there's you know, the shark dive flag that's everywhere. It's like, oh, well, what would be a Monterey Bay dive flag? And we were like, oh, it could be a rockfish, could be a sea otter, a sea lion, kelp, or something. It was very complicated discussion over what animal it should be. And then someone said, well, what animal, if you saw it every dive, you would be just like, it would make your life? And all of us were just like, oh, a mola, of course. Like, they're the most ridiculous animal in the ocean in terms of how they look. They're also just superlative, right? They're the heaviest bony fish. They can be 5,000 pounds, 11 feet across. They can have 300 million eggs at a time, supposedly, for one female. And you see them out here in the Monterey Bay, and they're all around subtropical and temperate zones around the world. There's 4 species of them. Now we're 3 species in Mola. It's just, there's such an incredible animal. If you're a Bostonian and you see one you call a baby whale, you're gonna go viral, you know. So it's you know, it's not a tuna, Jay, but it is a Monterey Dive flag. And so basically, I made 250 of them, gave them to my friends, and then they all kind of dispersed after college. Graduate students over here, going to work over here. And then the guerrilla marketing of doing no marketing and just having it on people's water bottles, people were like, oh, where do you get that sticker? So then after that, started making more. And then now if you come to Monterey dive shops, if you send, you can order them on divemola.com. And if it's been months, I'm sorry, that's my bad. There's been a lot going on. Yeah, so we've got, you know, stickers, koozies, little mini things. We got hats on a Teespring. And the thing that I've really found fascinating about it is that it was just a fun little sticker. But the Monterey dive community is really like, people who come dive here, like, it's really tight knit. They always kind of want something to walk away from, and like the dive flag is just so internationally recognizable. But there is also a Mola militia that exists underground, where it's not like, you know, what's your favorite animal in the ocean? I love sharks. I love whales. It feels almost like a speakeasy of underwater fandom, where it's just like, you ever hear about those ocean sunfish? Ever hear about those? They're pretty crazy, right? And it's like, yeah, I love molas, you know. And then so just now there's a video going somewhat viral that KSBW took of just a school of molas in the harbor that were there yesterday or the day before.
Cool.
And so yeah, they're just the coolest fish. So anyway, that's the Monterey Dive sticker there. If you see this, they either know me or they came to Monterey to get it.
It's awesome. And for those listening, it's the silhouette of a mola with the dive flag superimposed on it. It's awesome. So Dalton and I, we're gonna order a whole bunch from you.
Oh yeah, no, send me your address. I'll get you some. And then there's a new Mola book that's coming out, and it'll be featured in there. The Dive Mola will be featured. So I'm very excited about that.
What's the name of the book?
Awesome.
Do you know?
It's by Turney Teese, who's a Mola researcher, but I do not know
Their timeline.
I don't know the name, but it'll be the anthology of molas, basically the Mola book. It'll be my Bible.
Awesome.
I'll be studying it.
Awesome.
Right on.
So you can tell us where people can find more about you. We talked about your Instagram, but tell everyone where they can find you on the old interweb.
Yeah, so right now I'm on, most of my presence is on Instagram at Underwater Pat. I also have a Vimeo, same deal, Underwater Pat. I was starting a YouTube. I'll get back to it at some point. That's also Underwater Pat. Yeah, that's basically where I've been putting on most of my photos for the moment. And you can also go to divemola.com or at divemola for the stickers there. But yeah, thank you so much for anyone out there who wants to shoot me a follow. If you have any questions, if you're ever in the area, let me know. Love to chat, hang out, socially distant for the moment, and then underwater much closer maybe.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But yeah, thanks so much for reaching out and having me, and for just letting me. Clearly, I've been socially isolated for a very long time. That any amount of like, oh, I can just talk. Okay.
Yeah.
So, thanks so much for having me.
We're glad to have you on. It was awesome meeting you and talking with you and meeting a fellow Nally diver.
Yeah.
And it's always awesome to me to meet other people that have such a passion for not only the underwater world, but wanting to share it with other people.
Oh,
for sure. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts and views and wonderful photos and videos. We're huge fans. So everyone, please make sure to check out more of Pat's work and definitely follow him. You won't be disappointed. He's producing amazing work. So thanks for sitting down with us, and hopefully we get to do a follow-up sometime soon. Maybe in person we can do go out on a dive together and do an on-location follow-up.
That'd be
podcast.
fun. We should try to do it underwater and see if any of it's intelligible, right?
Yeah. If you
Well,
maybe
we'll just get we'll film it underwater, and
Yeah.
then we'll just when we get back up top, we'll be like,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
we were
down
at 60 feet.
Yeah, I'm really good at miming too. So just like, so
Yes.
then when I was pulling the rope and then having a coffee, it was awesome.
We'll see what we can do. Thanks so much for your time, Pat. We'll look
course,
forward
thank
to
you.
catching up with you soon. Stay safe and stay in touch. All right.
Awesome, will do. Let's get some bubbles underwater. Very soon.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Talk to you later, bud.
See you, Pat.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.